Dr. William Painter here for Journey Road Ministries. This is the week of Proper 8 as opposed to improper. I don't know what the improper would be. In any case, I'm doing a song here by John Prine. There's a big surprise for you. I'll explain some of the lyrics. It was written by John Prine about his experience to his grandfather's funeral. So, without further ado, I'll sing it for you. There's a rainbow of babies draped o'er the graveyard, where all the dead sailors wait for their brides. And the cold, bitter snow has strangled each grass blade, where the salt from their tears washed out with the tide. And I smiled on the Wabash the last time I passed it. Yes, I gave her a wink from the passenger side. And my foot fell asleep as I swallowed my candy, knowing he was in heaven before he died. Now the harbor's on fire with the dreams and desires of 1,000 young poets who failed because they tried. For a rhyme without a reason floats down to the bottom, where the scavengers eat them and wash in with the tide. And I smiled on the Wabash the last time I passed it. Yes, I gave her a wink from the passenger side. And my foot fell asleep as I swallowed my candy, knowing he was in heaven before he died. The sun can play tricks with your eyes on the highway. The moon can lay sideways till the ocean stands still. But a person can't tell his best friend he loves him till time stopped breathing and you're alone on the hill. And I smiled on the Wabash the last time I passed it. Yes, I gave her a wink from the passenger side. And my foot fell asleep as I swallowed my candy, knowing he was in heaven before he died. Okay, well, that's Captain Prine, and I'll see you on the flip side. Welcome to the flip side. Our readings today, our gospel today, comes from Luke chapter 9, verses 51 to 62. And Jesus is on his way, by the way, to his crucifixion and death. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him, but they did not receive him, because his face was set toward Jerusalem. When his disciples James and John saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them. Then they went on to another village, and as they were going along the road, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." But he said, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home." Jesus said to him, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." Thus endeth the message for the day, or the week. This is kind of a tough message, actually, because Jesus explains to us why it's hard to be a disciple. People go, "Oh, I follow Jesus," you know. They put bumper stickers, "Follow me if you follow Jesus," and all this stupid, lightweight, cultural garbage. It's not easy to follow Jesus. Look at his disciples, okay? Look what happened to his disciples. They all came to a bad end except John. And, a real bad end. And what Jesus says here is, the guy says perfectly human things. He said, you know, right, let me go bury my father, and then I'll join you. And Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead. Another one says, well, you know, I got to go take care of things. And Jesus says, no, once you put your hand to the plow, nobody turns back. And I think that this message is so relevant right now. It is so relevant right now when we have a Supreme Court that takes away rights from women, from half the population, denies them agency over their own bodies in the name of supposedly the innocent unborn, when in fact the same people deny health care, deny insurance, deny maternity leave, deny baby formula, deny daycare, deny any kind of real help for babies. But they hide behind the voices of the unborn because the unborn don't speak. The unborn can't speak. And so it's simple for them. It's easy for them to throw this costume on, to pretend that they're following Jesus. Well, they're not. They're not following Jesus because they show no compassion, no care, no concern, look, okay, if any women are out there watching this, I'm sorry. I am sincerely and profoundly sorry. My wife and daughter, are past their childbearing years, and they're just as angry as can be. It is terrible to know that young girls, that a 12-year-old girl can be raped and will be forced to carry that pregnancy to term, even if it was her father or her uncle. And you think that doesn't happen? It happens all the time. And not only is she forced to carry it to term, but she's going to be forced to allow visitation. That person who raped her will always be a part of her life. She is nothing but property. And I am so angry about this. I am so upset about this. And what makes me the most upset is these people who claim to be Christians. Because it's not the Jews. Judaism demands right to abortion to protect the life and health of the woman. And the same with Hinduism, and the same with Buddhism, and the same with a majority of Protestant flavors of Christianity. It's only extreme Protestantism and Catholicism that demand that a woman be forced to carry a child to term. When I was a kid, I think it was For Whom the Bell Tolls. It was Rock Hudson was the star, and I can't remember the female star, but this is in World War I, I think. And they escape Italy, and she's pregnant. She's pregnant, and she's not going to live unless they crush the head of the baby. And it's very, very poignant, and they do. I mean, she dies, right? She dies. And I was just in tears, and I asked my father, how could they possibly do that? How could they possibly sacrifice a grown woman's life for an infant who has no experience, nothing? And he said, well, son, that's what Catholics do, because that child is an innocent life and she's not innocent. And I said, that's the stupidest thing, and I have never felt differently about it. To put a woman's life in jeopardy over a pregnancy is wrong, and it's immoral. And to allow that to happen means you are not a disciple of Christ. You are not a follower of Christ. You do not love your neighbor, because if you did, you'd help her. You'd help her get access to birth control. You'd help her get access to health care, reproductive health care. You'd help her. If she has an ectopic pregnancy, she's going to die. If she can't get an abortion, if she can't get a D&C, and she has an ectopic pregnancy, her life for these people is over. It's over. And once I read the dialogue, these males were like, well, we'll just put the ectopic pregnancy back in the uterus. It's insane. It is an ideology, an extremist ideology driven by the intent to control women's lives. And that's not all, folks. That's not all. Because Thomas wrote in his opinion that Obergefell, that marriage equality, were on the chopping block. Okay? I mean, when I was growing up in Texas, it was illegal to have homosexual sex in your own home between two consenting adults. It was illegal. They could please come in there and arrest you for that. And the Supreme Court said, no, you have a right to privacy there. And when I was a pastor in Iowa, and the Supreme Court passed the law, or, proclaimed gay marriage to be legal and protected by the Constitution, I spent most of my wedding ceremonies, performing ceremonies for gay people. And it was just so wonderful. I mean, there were young couples, there was old couples, and there were, male couples and female couples. And they were all so joyous and happy. And it was love. It was about love. It was proper and right. And yes, it's hard to do that. It's hard. I'm not gay. I understand gay people. I understand lesbians. I understand LGBTQI or any of intellectually, I don't understand any of it. Well, I understand that I have to love my neighbor, and I have to love my neighbor, and I have to love my neighbor, and it's hard sometimes to do that. I've always said this right along. Jesus said only two things: love God and love your neighbor. And people are like, oh, Jesus this and Jesus that. You know what I say to them? Do everything Jesus said about abortion. Because you know what he said? Nothing. Do everything Jesus said about being homosexual or gay or lesbian or any of that kind of stuff. And you know what Jesus said about that? Nothing. He said nothing. And they've had to cherry pick. There were abortifactants available. Jesus was a Jew. He would have supported abortion. His religion supported abortion. And they are a heresy, and they are heretics, and they are a danger, not only to the secular state, but they are a danger to the sectarian state as well. They are a threat to Christianity because they claim themselves to be Christians, and they are the opposite of Christians because they don't have the will or fortitude or moral compass to be a Christian, to be a follower of Jesus. In this little story, the Samaritans, it's a perfect example. Samaritans are like, oh no, you're going to Jerusalem, we can't stay here. And there's a long history of animosity between the Hebrews and the Samaritans, right? You know about this, the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan, and why it's so poignant. And so John and James says, hey, why don't we just rain hellfire and brimstone down on them? Can we do that, Jesus? Can we do that? Expressing their nationalism. And what did Jesus do? He rebuked them. He rebuked them. We need to rebuke these people. We need to be strong. We need to be active. We need to do more than vote. We need to learn to protect the rights of the most vulnerable people in our society. And right now, the most vulnerable people in our society is a 12-year-old girl with a rapist father. I heard a story the other day of this woman with a 12-year-old daughter who kicked her out of the house. And when her dad picked her up, she called the police because he only supposed to have her on the weekends. In other words, she only wanted that little girl on the streets. Can you imagine what that means? Okay, what that means? How vulnerable that little girl is at 12 on the streets? And dollars to donuts, if you went up there and asked that woman if she's a Christian, she put her hand on the Bible and she said, hey, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus. And they're liars, and they're not. There's coming a time sound apocalyptic here. There's coming a time when we have to stand up and we have to say, that is not Christian, and you are not Christians. I don't know what you are, but you do not follow Jesus. You are not followers of Christ. And this story is a perfect example, because if you're going to be a follower of Christ, you need to let the dead bury their own dead. It's not your family that's important here. It's about your community, about expressing and being love for your neighbors, about proclaiming the kingdom of God. And that song, He Was in Heaven Before He Died, that song was about John Prine going to visit his grandfather's funeral, being his grandfather's funeral, and the babies. It's a graveyard. It's a graveyard, draped like rainbows. The little babies, angels. And Prine is so beautiful because he says, the Wabash. It used to run through here, where I live in Iowa, and he says, and he's on the train, to go see his grandfather in Tennessee, or to go visit the funeral, and he said, my foot fell asleep as I swallowed my candy, and I realized he was in heaven before he died. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, it's surprising. What do you do when you swallow your candy? What do you do when your foot falls asleep? And it was surprising that he was in heaven before he died. We need to make that heaven. And we need to start by embracing our gay neighbors, our lesbian neighbors, our gender fluid. It doesn't matter what they are. Embracing our neighbors. And with that, I'm going to close. I see the clock here. It's been 13 minutes. And that's coming up against the limit. Love God. Love your neighbors. It'll be time for Christians to be strong. God bless. See you in 3 weeks.